Sony Pictures wanting to work on the Legend of Zelda movie is just more proof and evidence that PlayStation and Sony are too scared to go head-to-head with Nintendo. Clearly, this is them not wanting to compete with Nintendo in any way, shape, or form. Because here's the deal, guys. The movie industry has been PlayStation's domain for 36 years. 36 years they've been developing and producing movies, while Nintendo was primarily focused on video games, with that one exception when they lent out the Mario IP to somebody to make that live-action Mario movie, which didn't do so well, and for decades, Nintendo just didn't do that ever since. They've been extremely overprotective with their intellectual property. Until a couple of years ago, they had their big $1.36 billion box office comeback with the Mario movie. And the movie was a massive success. Again, $1.36 billion in the box office. And this is technically probably the first Nintendo movie, because this is like the first movie that they were heavily involved in making. Shigeru Miyamoto, who is the creator of Mario himself, he was really in charge of like the creativity and the direction of this movie. And apparently they were going to make Peach the hero at the end of the movie, and Shigeru Miyamoto put his foot down and said, no, Mario and Luigi are supposed to be the heroes of this movie. And hopefully he's going to do even more of that with the Zelda movie. And there's not going to be a bunch of nonsense of, you know, Zelda being some type of, you know, girl boss or whatever. I'm hoping it's more of along the lines of, you know, Link had to save her. Link is training her archery and stuff like that so she could, you know, pick up her own weight and whatnot. But regardless, you know, that's completely besides the point. You know, Nintendo had a lot of involvement with this film, and as a result, it was a huge success. Not only did it actually do better than the last Mario movie that was live action, but it actually did way better than Uncharted, which was also made by Sony Pictures, and that movie only did $400 million in the box office. So not even half of what the Mario movie did. You know, it only 400 million, so that's less than half. And now PlayStation has seen that, and now they're trying to, you know, they want to kind of jump in on Nintendo's success, but they're also doing this because they want to establish a good friendship with Nintendo, because they want to show Nintendo they're not trying to get in their way. And that's funny because they've been in Hollywood for 36 years, and yet they're the ones who are choosing to compromise. They're the ones who are choosing to, you know, bend the knee for Nintendo and help them work on one of their biggest franchises, which is The Legend of Zelda. That's pretty funny. I mean, imagine if Nintendo did something like this. Imagine if Nintendo was like, we're going to help PlayStation make Horizon, or, you know, whatever big IP they have, you know. People would never shut up about it. The whole internet would be screaming about it. But we have Sony Interactive, Sony Entertainment, whatever. They're over here trying to, you know, they're trying to be on Nintendo's good side. Nintendo, this was their domain for 36 years. Again, PlayStation has been doing this for 36 years. Nintendo decides to come in and, you know, do their big epic, you know, Mario movie. It ends up being a success, and instead of PlayStation trying to, you know, compete with them, go head to head and make their own movies that could potentially, you know, do better, they instead say, hey, we want to help you make the Legend of Zelda movie. We want to be your friend here. We don't want to compete with you. So again, you know, this just goes to show you guys that it's really PlayStation who doesn't want to compete with Nintendo. They are the ones who keep changing course and doing all of these things that indicate that they don't want to go head to head with Nintendo. Okay, they're the ones who have changed course, who have changed strategies over the years. Nintendo keeps dominating with video games, and PlayStation is like, we're not really going to make video games anymore. We'll make cinematic experiences instead. And, you know, Nintendo continues to double down on exclusivity. PlayStation's like, oh, you know, we'll put our games on other platforms. As a matter of fact, we're going to put our biggest games on mobile devices now. That's what they're doing, and that's what I mentioned in my last video. Now they are going mobile with their video games, and it's two of their biggest video games, arguably, because Ratchet & Clank is supposed to be like their version of Mario, since, you know, Crash Bandicoot ended up failing big time, and he's now multi-plat. And then on top of that, you got Horizon, which is pretty much their biggest and most successful IP. It's their most successful franchise, with about close to 38 million copies sold between that and the first game. So it's at least the most successful in recent years for sure. And it's the IP that they really seem to be getting behind, even though they keep giving us, you know, The Last of Us remakes or whatever. This is the only franchise that they're still pumping out new video games for, and we're seeing them put their next big Horizon video game on mobile and not on PlayStation 5 at all. And people are like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? Why couldn't they put it on both platforms? And I think the reason is because they're just so scared of Nintendo that they don't even want to compete with them by putting their game on any console for that matter. So instead, they're just going straight to mobile, straight to phones, and hoping that it's going to find success there instead. That's just how scared PlayStation and Sony are of Nintendo right now. Now, even on the big screen, they don't have enough confidence in competing with Nintendo. Even though they have they had the movie rights to the Spider-Man films, Spider-Man as a character, even like some of the Spider-Man, you know, villains and other characters in the Spider-Man universe. Like they have, you know, they have all of that. They had their own intellectual property from PlayStation, like, you know, Uncharted, Last of Us, but they don't have enough confidence in any of those because none of them have the drawing power that Mario and Zelda have. And as a matter of fact, even Nintendo, some of Nintendo's less notable franchises are bigger than PlayStation's franchises. That's a fact. And so now we are basically seeing PlayStation, you know, in a way, just kind of surrender to Nintendo in the blockbuster as well. So it's not just in video games anymore. Even in, you know, Hollywood and on the big screen, PlayStation is basically choosing to bend the knee and do the will of Nintendo. We even saw the viewership for The Last of Us go down. So the second season, it only had about 3.7 million viewers, whereas the first season had 8.2 million viewers. So that's down by 55%. Now that's pretty disgusting and pathetic that there's that many people who watched the first season and enjoyed it. And I remember there was a lot of people defending it. They were defending that disgusting, those episodes and scenes with the two men committing sodomy with each other. It was very disgusting. It was gross. It was just an abomination. And a lot of stupid PlayStation fans reported on it because some of them were not happy about that. They were disgusted and grossed out. Like, oh, it's okay if they're gay, but we don't want to see them do it. It's like, no, it's not okay, first of all. And, you know, you shouldn't have even watched that garbage to begin with. But yeah, this is, you know, a lot of people defending that. And that's because PlayStation fans, you know, this is what they're into. You know, they're into that kind of degenerate filth. And that's probably what they spend most of their time watching on their PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 consoles. They want to talk shit about, you know, Nintendo fans and how we enjoy playing, you know, video games that look like they cater to kids or whatever. But, well, you know what? I'd rather do that than, you know, play and watch some gay shit. So, you know, you guys are just absolutely backwards and fucking stupid. But regardless, the second season, it had lost like about more than half the viewership, right? Yeah. So yeah, it lost about half of the viewership in the second season, and a lot of it had to do with them doing exactly what they did in the video game, which was killing off one of the main characters. I couldn't give two shits or whatever, but it really just goes to show that PlayStation, you know, they are just absolutely terrible in all areas. And because they are failing with their own intellectual property on the big screen, they're having to bend the knee to Nintendo, and they're having to help Nintendo produce their own, you know, big epic movies. So this is just more proof and evidence that Nintendo really did bully PlayStation and Sony out of competition. They don't want to compete with Nintendo anymore, and all of the signs are there. From, you know, PlayStation, you know, getting rid of exclusivity, slowly getting rid of their exclusivity, putting some of their games on Nintendo, some of their games on Xbox. We see them making cinematic experiences instead of making video games that could actually compete with Nintendo. And when they do actually make video games that look like they can compete with Nintendo, instead of putting them on a PlayStation 5, they instead go mobile with those games, like Horizon, like Ratchet & Clank. Those are games that are only going to be available for smartphones. So they definitely do not want to compete with Nintendo when it comes to video games anymore. And now we're seeing them not want to compete with Nintendo on the big screen by, you know, choosing to help them with the Legend of Zelda movie. And Nintendo doesn't really need their help but I guess they probably decided, hey, let's kind of bargain with Nintendo. We'll do it. We'll do the movie for them. We'll get a smaller cut out of it, but it's going to be pretty big anyways because this is The Legend of Zelda, and at least this will prevent them from, you know, coming after us and our movies. We'll have like a healthy relationship. We're not going to make movies that are going to compete with The Legend of Zelda or Mario. And that's pretty much what they're doing. They're doing all of this because they don't want to compete with Nintendo, even in their biggest domain. You know, they, again, 36 years in Hollywood, and yet Nintendo comes with, they come out strong with their first ever animated Mario movie. It does over $1 billion, and PlayStation's like, all right, time to make friends with Nintendo and time to help them with their Legend of Zelda movie, just so they know that, you know, we are not going to get in their way. We are going to let them come in and have success here, and we're not even going to bother trying to, you know, go head to head with them. So anyways, you guys in the comments, let me know what you think about all of this. What do you think are going to be the next big Nintendo movies, and what other movies is PlayStation going to try to help out with? Are they going to try to help out with as many Nintendo movies as they possibly can? Maybe even with TV shows, now that The Last of Us has pretty much failed and has pretty much tanked. Are they going to start looking to make some TV shows for Nintendo, you know, franchises as well? So you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Hit the like button, of course, and, you know, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Even if you didn't like this video, if you don't like the message that I'm preaching here, still like the video, still leave as many comments, still subscribe, because it's going to help the algorithm push my channel and more people are going to see these videos. With that being said, you all take care.